right, welcome back everyone. So now this is the third path of the video that we'll be looking at, and we've been looking at these architecture. From the first video, we talked about the purpose of SSM, how it can ensure that we access our instances securely, and we also talked about the fact that we want to also connect to our Jenkins server, via GitHub securely, because when you push into your GitHub repository, you want your Jenkins pipeline to be triggered automatically. And in most cases, in some of the videos that I have seen, the trigger is actually built on HTTP. But in our own video today, we want to do that with HTTPS, because our Jenkins server already has SSL connection, right? So GitHub should also connect via SSL, not through HTTP, so that we are sure that everything that we're doing is secure. Okay, so now that we have the Jenkins server in place, we have the EC2 server as well in place. So now it's time to deploy, from Jenkins to this EC2 instance, still leveraging SSM. As well. And one thing I would like to show you here is this. Now, if you come over to Systems Manager, if you come over to Systems Manager, if you open up Systems Manager, one of the things that I want to show you here is that you will see that the EC2 instances, both the Jenkins server and the web server, they have actually been registered with Session Manager. So which means, we can manage them from there. You can install updates. You can do a lot of things with this beautiful service. So if you come here to Session Manager, we're going to see that the two instances have been registered and they are online. So if you come here now, you can see that a session has been established for the two of them, and the status says connected. And then we can see the document name that we're using. And if you come to session history, you can see that there's a session right here which is terminated, which is the one I opened up on the console, but that has been terminated. But of course, if you come back to sessions, there's this document name. If you click on the document name, the document name is basically a list of documents that you can use to interact with your SSM command. And there are different document names for different purposes. As we're going to be seeing in the pipeline, we're going to be using a document name called, run shell script. We're going to see that as well. So that's the document name that we're going to be using. And that's the way SSM actually works. So I just wanted to click on it and show us, what the document name really is. All right, now while we're waiting for this guy to come up and to load, the next thing we need to do now is to create a new item. But like I said before that, we want to configure a trigger, between Jenkins and GitHub. We want to connect GitHub to Jenkins so that every of our pipeline can be triggered once we push into our repository. And another thing that also we want to do is that we also want to connect to our repository using personal access token. We don't want to use SSH. So on the GitHub, you're going to generate a personal access token, and then that personal access token is going to be saved on Jenkins, to authenticate with your GitHub repository. So we are not also going to be using SSH for that. We're going to be using personal access token, because personal access token is a token that you can set the expiry for the token, and then you can also define the level of access when you're using a personal access token. So that the token cannot do beyond this, beyond that, and all of. So we're going to see all of that right now, and then we go over and deploy. So let's look at this document. So for AWS Session Manager, there are different documents. So this document is Start Interactive Session, and you can see all the things that you have inside of it. And of course, if you click on document, I believe that you're also going to see some other documents that Session Manager actually uses. So these are different documents, for different purposes. Different document for different purposes, and it's a long list. Of course, we can't go over them one by one, but I just wanted to show you how those documents are gotten. All right, so now let's configure the web. So I'm going to go to my GitHub. And first of all, I need to come here to settings, and then I need to come to settings right here, and then we need to generate a personal access token. And I'm going to scroll down and come right here to developer settings. And then I'm going to go to personal access token, and I'm going to click on fine-grained tokens. Now you can see that I already have one that I used. But of course, for the purpose of what we're doing, we're going to create a new one. So I'm going to say generate a new token. It's asking me to authenticate. So I'm going to use my password instead. All right. And then, of course, the token name is going to be Jenkins. So let's call that Jenkins YT, all right, which is YouTube. Okay, and the owner is this, and of course the expiry date I can just say 7 days. I mean, this thing should be expired in 7 days. Okay, and then of course it's not going to be public repositories, but I want to limit it to just a particular repository that I've created already, which is a private repo, by the way. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to say that I want to limit this to these Jenkins repo. All right, so, and I think the repository is this one, Jenkins _ SSM. So I'm going to click on that, and as you can see, there's a padlock, and that tells you that this is a private repository. Now, if you come here to these repository permissions, if you expand this, you can see that, I mean, by default, there is no access. But because of what we want to do, we need to give it some access to basically fetch something from the repository, which is, you know, primarily just read-only access, all right? So under this content, I'm going to come here and say read-only, all right, under content. And then I'm going to come right down and then look for some other information here. Metadata is also mandatory. I mean, that's just read-only as well. Let's look for other things. For Webhook, all right, we can also say, I mean, maybe read-only as well. All right, so let's do that. Account permission, I mean, Jenkins server does not need account permission, so it doesn't need to do anything on our account, right? So we can leave that, and then we say generate token. Now the token is going to be generated, all right, and then we say generate token, and it's going to generate that for us. Now this token is going to represent like your username, all right? So it's going to represent your username. So I can come here, copy the token, go back to my Jenkins server, and then come here to credentials, all right, and then I'll click here and then say add credentials. All right, so the credential is going to be of username and password. So the username is going to be my GitHub rather, my GitHub username, which is this. The password is going to be the token. All right, and then I'm going to give it an ID. So I'm going to just call this one GitHub, all right, PAT, personal access token. All right, and then save that, and then I'm going to create. So now I'm not using a long-lasting SSH key. It's just going to, I mean, this token is going to expire in the next 7 days, so which means you can rotate it if you want to. Now, that is the first thing you want to do. Now, on your GitHub, you also want to configure what you call, now ensure that you copy and then paste this token somewhere safe so that in case you want to use it anytime, you can still use it, right? So let's go back again. And then I'm going to come here to the repository that we want to work with. I already have the code, the script, everything pushed into the repo, but I'm just doing this to show you how to configure, all right, Webhook, particularly with SSL. Remember, in the first video, we already have added the IP address of, you know, GitHub Webhook. We've added that to the load balancers, all right, to accept connection on those IPs via HTTPS. We've done that already. All right, so let's search for Jenkins _ SSM. That's the repository that I want to work with. All right, so this is the repo. Okay, and then I'm going to come here and click on settings. So click on settings, and then you see webhooks. So click on webhooks. All right, and then you add a webhook. Now here under the URL is going to be the URL of your Jenkins server, right? Which is this. So you can copy from this HTTPS up to this point. Copy from that point, and then you paste it here, and then you add what is called GitHub, all right, -webhook, all right, and then slash, you add that. The content type is going to be a JSON payload, so you click on JSON. You don't need any secret. So SSL, yes, it is recommended, so that's what we're going to use, and then we're going to say add webhook. Now, once the webhook has been added, of course, it's going to try to send, all right, a payload to your Jenkins server to verify that, you know, this thing succeeds. So, and you can see it says the last delivery was successful. So you can click here, all right, and then you can go to recent deliveries to go and see, I mean, what he delivered. So if you click on this, you can see that it says response is 200, and then this is the URL, all right, he sent something out, and then of course he will see the response, right? And so GitHub can now talk to the Jenkins server securely, all right, without, you know, any issues. So we have a secure access from GitHub to Jenkins. Okay, now that has been configured already. So let's go back to the repository. The next thing that we also want to do here is to go to Jenkins server and then go back to dashboard. All right, so we're going to come here to new item. Okay, and then let's just call these Jenkins SSL. All right, and then it's going to be a pipeline job. We're going to say okay. All right, and then we would, all right, come right here, scroll down, all right, GitHub hook trigger. So select that pipeline. So the pipeline is from SCM, so which means it's from a Git repo. Select Git. The repository URL, it's going to be this. So copy this. Remember, HTTPS, not SSH. So copy the HTTPS. All right, and then of course, it's going to give us this error. I mean, basically authentication, right? So we're going to come here and select. Now you can see that it tells us that support for password authentication was already removed since 2021. So that means you can't use password. You can only use the personal access token as your password. So I'm going to come here and select this. Now, once you select that, that error should clear automatically because now Jenkins can authenticate with your GitHub repository. All right. Now, the name of the Jenkins file that we want to run is, let me see. All right, it's Jenkins file. So we can leave that as default. So the branch name. So what's the name of the branch? So the branch name is Jenkins SSM. So we need to change that as well. So it's not master. It is Jenkins SSM. That's the name of the branch. But the file is still Jenkins file, right? So we can say save. So now we've saved it. So the next thing now is to push, all right, but of course we can build directly from here. But then let's go to the Jenkins pipeline and let's see what the pipeline that we want to use. Let's see what it looks like and let us see what commands we're going to be invoking, all right, in the pipeline. So this is the Jenkins pipeline. Now, again, here we don't have any node, all right, that we're using. So I'm just going to say node is any. The agent is any, so which means we don't have any node that we're working with. All right, the environment, the instance ID. Remember, we're dealing with SSM, all right? So we need the instance ID. So I'm going to go back to my instance, and my instance ID is right here. So copy that instance, and then you can replace this. All right. The region we're dealing with is EU East 1. So EU East 1. We have a bucket that we created earlier. So let's copy the name of that bucket. All right. So let's use that to replace this. Okay, so replace the bucket. And now we also have these with AWS. Now this with AWS is possible because of the pipeline AWS steps that we installed earlier. Remember that plugin that we installed on Jenkins. All right, so that's the purpose for which we installed the plugin. Now here we are looking at AWS SSL get call identity. We basically want to see the identity that the Jenkins server is going to assume. Remember, we attached a role to the Jenkins server. So we expect you to assume that role, because here the only credential we have on the Jenkins server is just the credentials for the GitHub, right? So if you come back to dashboard here, all right, and you go to manage Jenkins and you go to the credentials page, the only credential we have here is just for GitHub, the personal access token. We don't have any access key, we don't have any secret key configured, right? Because we have attached a role to the Jenkins server already. And so we expect that Jenkins will assume that role, all right, in order to carry out the operation that it wants to carry out within our AWS environment. So there's no need for access key and secret key. All right, but then we also want to see if Jenkins is assuming that role. All right. Now, when Jenkins checks out your Git repo, it's going to download this web setup.sh. It's just a simple shell script that installs Apache and copies a template file. I mean, just a simple thing. All right. What we're doing is not just about the shell script, it's about the whole infrastructure setup in a secure manner. And that's exactly what I want you to see. All right. So now, so we want Jenkins to copy that script to our S3 bucket, all right? Because like I said, SSM does not support the traditional, SSH workflow, which is, I mean, we could have used SCP if we're using SSH. SCP will have done the job for us. But in this case, Jenkins, SSM rather, does not support that SSH workflow. So we have to use a bucket instead. So we have the AWS S3 copy, all right, what we want to copy, and then we copy that into the S3 bucket. We already have the S3 bucket name defined here as a variable, all right. And then once that is done, we also want to define a function, right? And then the name of the function is command output, and inside of that function, we want to run a shell script. Now, the reason why we installed AWS CLI on both the Jenkins server and the web server is because we want to be able to use these AWS CLI commands. All right, so here we have the script, and then the command we want to run is AWS SSM send command. We want to send a command to the instance to run a particular script. And you can see here that the document name is AWS run shell script. That's the document name because what we want to do is to run a shell script. Now, you might be wondering, where do we get all these things from? I remember in one of my videos I mentioned it, but of course, for the sake of emphasis, I'm going to mention that again. Now, if you come here and you type AWS command line, all right, reference. All right, now this particular website is where you can get any AWS command that you're looking for, any AWS command at all. Right? If you want to run any AWS CLI commands, all right, against any of the AWS services, you can find the commands on this page. Whether it is SSM, whether it is EC2, whether it is S3, whatever command you want to run. For example, if I scroll down here, I'm going to see, all right, for SSM, if I scroll down, there should be for SSM. So if you come right here, you would see SSM. Where are you? All right, so you see SSM right here. So if you click on SSM, now if you click on that, it also gives you some available commands. And part of the available commands is that send command that you saw, all right, on the VS Code. So if you scroll down here, you're going to see send command. So if you click on send command, the send command has different options and arguments that can be used with it. All right, there are different options, there are different arguments that you can use with the send command. So if you scroll down here, you can see different options. Instance ID, which is something that we're using here. So instance ID, we're defining the instance ID, all right, which is the target in this case, all right. And then you see target ID or target list. Maybe you have more than one instance you want to target or something. All right, and then you have different options, right? And if you scroll down here, you also have the document name, which I showed us earlier, where you can get the document names from. All right, and then if you scroll down again, you can see different things. You can see parameters, you can see comment, you can see a whole lot of things. All right, and then of course, if you scroll down long enough, you're going to see an example of how to use these commands. Right now, this is an example. So I mean, you can see that I copied it from here. I mean, that's fine. All right, so this is an example. So you have, all right, SSM send command, the document name, the parameter. The parameter will contain the, things that you want to execute on that particular instance, right? The SCP copy, download, all those kind of things. The target, the comment, if you want to put a comment, and all of that. So this is where, we get all the examples, all right, from. So instance ID, document name, parameter. So parameters basically would include the commands that you want to execute. So here we want to do SCP copy. So we want to download something from the S3 bucket into the instance and then copy that to this particular path and then use chmod to execute, all right, that particular script. Okay, we want to use chmod to make it executable, bash, all right, to run that particular script. And then lastly, we also want to publish. If the command executes successfully, if it fails, if anything happens, we want to be able to visualize that on CloudWatch. Okay, so here we have the CloudWatch option as well, and that will publish to cloud. We can see here it says CloudWatch output enabled is true, and right here we have the CloudWatch log group name. So if this group name does not exist, it's going to create it. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why we created those policies in the first instance. So it's going to create it. Now, once the command is sent, another thing that we want to do also is that we want to be sure that this script was executed successfully. We don't just want to send the command and then just assume that everything is working and everything is fine. No, we want to also ensure that the command executed successfully and then it exited gracefully, which means we want to also monitor the send command activity. so that if there's any error, we can catch that and solve whatever error that we encounter. All right. So that is the reason why we also have this other function. All right. So the function name is command JSON, and then we have read JSON text command output. So basically everything that happens here, all right, is going to be stored inside of this particular function, all right, as a JSON output. Because if you look at what we have here, we have the output as JSON. So basically all of the commands that we're executing is going to generate a JSON output that will be stored inside of this variable or function, whatever you want to call it. Now, from that particular variable, we are also using read JSON, which is one of the options or tool that we get when we install the pipeline utility. All right. So read JSON is going to read this command output. All right. And whatever it reads inside of this command output is going to store that into another variable called command JSON. These names can be anything, right? It's just the name that we choose. It can be anything. So don't get yourself confused. This one is the only standard you have here, which is an option that you get as part of the pipeline utility plugin. All right. And then this dev is to define a function or variable or whatever. All right. And then we also have another dev. So we have the command ID equals command JSON, so which is the whatever it is that we have stored here, command ID. Remember, it is a JSON output, which means it is a key value kind of output. All right. And if you look at what you have here, let me see if I have it right here. All right. So if you look at what you have here, the output looks, I think I copied it somewhere. Oh, I can't find it again. Okay. All right. Now, the command, the output is a key value pair output. I mean, this is an example. Let's even use this. Now, this is JSON. All right. So this is key value pair. Okay. So, I mean, this is key. STD is a key. The value is get object. All right. Logs is a key. The value is what? Is create log string. All right. So the same thing is what we're doing here. So we're basically saying that inside of these command outputs, whatever it is that is there, read the text and then put it right here into this particular variable. Now, inside of this variable, we are looking for a line that is command and then the command ID. So basically, we want to fetch the command ID from the output, from the JSON output. That's what we want to fetch, the command ID. Okay, that is what we want to fetch. And then we are echoing out that command ID. And then when we echo that command ID out, we are using another command again, which is SSM wait command. So basically, we want to wait for the command we have executed. We want to wait for that command to succeed. All right. So which means we don't just want to send command, but we actually want to wait to ensure that that command executed successfully. So we have the SSM wait command as well. And then for the SSM wait command, you need the command ID, you need the instance ID, and then of course you also need the region ID as well. Now, another thing that we also need is what we call the command invocation. Now, when you do SSM send command, right, it sends something to the instance, right, and to execute a particular script. Okay, but then in order for you to be able to visualize the output, what the send command is actually doing, what it's actually running on your system, all right, the wait command is to say wait for the command to execute properly before you exit out. The get command invocation here is basically to help us print out the output as to whether the command failed or passed. Basically, what we need here is the status of that command. So that is the SSM get command invocation. We want to get the status of the send command. Remember, the send command is going to send the script, execute the script on the system. The wait command is going to wait for the execution to complete. The get invocation command is to help us to get the status of the execution. All right. So that is the get command invocation. So help us get the status of the command. We've sent out this command, but we need to know the status. Is it still running? Is it in the pending state? Is that it's completed successfully? Is there an error? Those kind of things, those kind of information are what the get command invocation, all right, will help us to achieve. So again, you need the command ID, you need the instance ID, you need the region, and of course, you can also print out its own outputs as well. All right, and then from that output, you can also get the status, remember, of the command that you have sent. So here we're looking for the status inside of the JSON output. We're looking for the status. So that will tell us if it failed, if it passed. All right, and then we also have an echo. So we have this if conditionals, which basically means if the status is not success, then it should print out to us, all right, the error and all these other messages. But then if it succeeds, then we should see, all right, this other path. Okay, so that is basically the Jenkins pipeline that we want to run. That's what the Jenkins pipeline would do, all right, for us. So guys, let's push to the S3 bucket. I mean, we've made some modifications. Let's push to the S3 bucket. Let's push to the GitHub repo. And then let's see if the GitHub repository is able to trigger this pipeline, all right, and then build it, all right, for us. So let's see how that works. So git commit -am. I mean, I've committed into the repo already before. And then we're just going to say Jenkins file updated. All right, and then let's do git push. Okay, so, I mean, it should send a payload to the Jenkins server. So let's verify that and let's see if this is actually working. All right, now, look at that, guys. All right, it tells us pending. So, I mean, the push worked. So let's click on this guy. Let's look at the console output. Let's see what is going on behind the scene. All right, so let's look at the console output. So the job has started running on the pipeline. All right, we're able to connect. If you look at what you have, you're able to connect to the Git repo. All right, I was able to fetch. So that means the personal access token is working. And then if you scroll down also from here, we can see that the upload was successful to the S3 bucket. So that means if I come to my bucket and I refresh my bucket, I should see that the web script has been pushed successfully. But I can see that we have an error then. So it says access denied when calling send command, user ARN assumed, the Jenkins instance role is not authorized to perform SSM send command on this particular stuff because no identity-based policy allows the SSM command action. So that's all right. So that means we need to check the IAM role or the policy that is attached to the role in order to figure out what these is about. So let's go to it tells us here already that the issue we have is with the Jenkins role, right? So let's go back to the IAM. All right, so let's look for the Jenkins role. I'm going to remove these account ID. Maybe that's what is causing the issue. We're going to remove that. So the name is AWS Run Shell Script. I believe that's the correct name. All right, and then let's save that. All right, so and then we have the SSM send command right here. So I'm going to save that. All right, so let's save that and let's go back again. Okay, let's go back again and deploy. So of course, having an error in your pipeline does not mean there's a problem. It only means that something is not working as expected. So let's see. All right, so we have 6 seconds now. It shows that the pipeline is probably working. Okay, so 12 seconds. So that means the pipeline has it has gone past that. So now we can see that the SSM command is working. So we can take note of what we changed in the policy that allowed these to work. So we have these now working, and then we have the command ID. So you can see that the SSM wait command is waiting, to ensure that the command actually worked. So let's take a look at what we have. So here we ran the SSM command, all right? So you can see it produced a JSON output. Then the command ID was printed out, the SSM wait command also executed, all right, waiting for the command to succeed. And then we have the SSM get invocation command, which basically would help us to check the status of the command that we just executed. And then, of course, it returned back the status and told us that the status is a success. And of course, the command succeeded. And of course, we can also see the standard output here, which is what SSM command actually executed on that server. All right, and that's exactly what we can see right here. And then, of course, if you look at what we have here, 443 was what was used, and it says connected. So, and then if you scroll down, we can see the script, all right, succeeded as we expected. Okay, but of course, we had a little glitch here and there, which is not unexpected, all right, and that should not deter us. I mean, it's something that you would face, every now and then when you're working, so it's not a problem when your pipeline is like this. I mean, you shouldn't freak out. It's part of the job. Okay, and your ability to be able to figure out what the issue is what makes you, know what you're doing. Okay, so now the deployment has been completed, everything done securely. No unnecessary ports being opened up and all that. So we can come right here. We've deployed to the instance, right? So that means if I go here now to my instance, all right, the session has exited already. Let's look at this one. Well, this one too has exited. So of course we can connect back, all right, to the session. We can always connect back to the sessions. So that means if I come in and I do sudo systemctl status Apache 2, all right, I can see that my Apache web server is actually up and running. So that means the deployment actually, completed successfully. All right. So that's another thing to know. All right. So the Apache web server is up and running. So the next thing we want to do now is to go to the instance. Now, this instance cannot be accessed just yet because we have not added it to the load balancer. So we need to create a target group and then register it with the load balancer as well. And then, of course, we use the order certificate, and then the load balancer will undo both SSL termination for the Jenkins node and this web server. So that's what we want to do right now. So I'm going to go back to the load balancer page, and I'm going to come here to target group. All right, and this instance is accessible. What do you call it now? So let's create a new target group. All right, let's see how this will go. So create a new target group. You go to instances. The target group name, we can call that server TG. All right, now the port, it's going to be port 80. All right, so it's going to be HTTP port 80. SSM project. The path is going to be /. We do not need to put login like the Jenkins own. And then we can say next. And of course, we register the instance spending below. All right, so let's register this instance, include a spending, and then we create a target group. So the target group has been created. So now, how do we connect this target group with the load balancer that is already in existence, right? So we want to see how that can be done. So we come here to load balancers, click on your load balancer. Now, under the listener and rules, click on your listener. All right, and then if you come right here, you'll see certificates. So click on certificates. We already have these certificates attached, but we have another one that has not been added. So we can come here and say add certificate. And the one we've not added is this one, Teach Dev Online. So we select that and say include a spending below, and then we add pending certificates. Now, once you have that, your load balancer now has 2 certificates. All right, so the idea is that anybody that is accessing, anything that has to do with class of 25, then the load balancer knows that, that certificate is for this particular target group. Okay, but for another target group, we want to also have another certificate so that anybody that is coming on that host name, the load balancer will direct them to that target group with the correct certificate. Okay, because if you look at the Jenkins server here, your Jenkins server is already using this certificate name. All right, so that means when we access the web server, the certificate name should be something different, right? It should be something related to this Teach Dev Online. That's what it should be. Now we come back to rules and then we say add rule. All right, so we click on add rule, and then when you click on add rule, you're going to go through a few steps that will allow you to be able to access your instance, and then of course allow your load balancer to be able to manage, all those connections and terminate them appropriately. All right. So that's exactly what we want to do. So the page is still loading. While that page is loading, we can actually come right here. We can open up the load balancer in another tab. All right, we can open up the load balancer in another tab. The network is a bit slow, but that's okay. Or better still, I can come back here and, all right, this is the load balancer that we're working with, right? So I can edit, or I can just copy this name. Okay, copy that name of the load balancer. On this particular domain, you come here to add a new record. The record is going to be CNAME, and then here I'm going to say web server. All right, and then it's pointing to that same load balancer. All right, and then I save. Okay, so it's pointing to the same load balancer, all right? But of course, there are different domains. So I'm going to come right here and, all right, so here is the rule that we want to add. So this rule, I'm going to call this rule web server rule. All right, I'm going to click on next, and then there's a condition that I need to add. So click on condition. The condition is that it's going to be host header condition. Click on host header, and then the name is going to be web server .teach dev.online. So the idea here is that any request that is made to this host header, then it should redirect it to a particular target group using the certificate for that particular target group. All right. So, I mean, that certificate also matches, okay, the host header, because we already have a certificate for *teach_dev_online, right? So anybody that is coming on any subdomain, any host header that is web server.teach_dev_online already knows that, oh, teach dev online, I have a certificate for that name already, and then it redirects it appropriately and to the appropriate target group. Okay, so you click on confirm, all right, and then you go next, and then here you decide, all right, I mean, this host header, what are you forwarding it to? So right here, I'm going to say that it's going to be forwarded to the server target group. All right. And then you say next. So the priority, I mean, you can put 1 as the priority. It won't be between 1 to 1000, but let's use 1. And then you say next. And then you come here and then you create. All right. So once you have created that, don't mind that error page. So once you click on create, now if you go back to your target group, all right, and then you click on the other one, the server TG, it should be initializing right now. Can you see that? It's initializing at the moment. So it's going to be registered with the load balancer pretty soon. All right. But if you look at what we have now, we have 2 rules. All right. One is this host header, and then it's going to be serving this particular target group. So anybody that comes on this website is going to direct them to this target group. Anybody that comes on the default one is going to direct them to the Jenkins, all right, target group. And then of course we have their different certificates connected to the load balancer. All right, so we have the difference and we connected to the load balancer. All right, so let's click on this load balancer again, and then let's wait for the target. I'm going to delete this. So let's wait for the target group. And surprisingly, it is telling us that this is unhealthy. It is telling us that this is what? This is unhealthy. Wow, that is surprising, right? So let's take a look at what could cause these unhealthy setup. All right. So we can come back to the instance. Let's look at the web server instance. Okay, and then let's go to security. All right, so the instance, oops, look at that. That's the reason why it's telling us it's an LD, because the inbound rule is only accepting HTTPS traffic on our private IP, right? So that means the load balancer can communicate with the web server. So let's edit that, right? Let's edit that. So come to your security group, make the necessary adjustment, click on inbound. We need to delete this, add a new rule, HTTPS from the load balancer security group. All right, so that should be this one, and then you save the changes. Okay, so now once the changes has been saved, after some time, this should, it should become healthy. All right, after some time. So we don't need to do anything really, right? It's going to adjust itself accordingly. So now let's open up the web server. All right, web server.teach dev.online. And then let's press enter and let's see what we are going to have. All right, so web server.teach dev.online. Okay, so let's wait. All right, it's still loading. Okay, so it's telling us web server.teach dev.online. It's telling us 504 gateway timed out. All right, now remember the web server, the load balancer can't reach the web server. We just adjusted that. All right, we just made the necessary adjustment. So let's wait and then let's see. Okay, it's still unhealthy. So the load balancer is saying it as something that it cannot access. Okay, so you might need to just wait a little while for this to readjust itself. All right, it's still telling us the bad gateway. Let's wait a while. for that, as soon as the load balancer is able to communicate with the instance, then it should give us, all right, our web server. Now, if you click here, and then you, of course, can see that the connection is secured. And then you come here, you look at the certificate. It is actually using the correct certificate from AWS, right? But it can be the issue of, the load balancer not being able to reach the instance at this moment. So we can just wait a while. I mean, sometimes it takes a while. If you look at the health check, 2 consecutive failures, timeout is 5 seconds, interval is 30 seconds. It requires 5 consecutive health check successes, okay, in order for it to be up or to be deemed healthy, okay. But then we can just wait some time for that, and I mean, sometimes it might take a while before that happens, but I'm sure it's going to work at the end of the day, okay. So, and another thing that we can also do is to go to security group. All right, for these particular, where's that? So let's go to the security group of this guy, even though we are not allowing port 443, port 80. But then remember, this target group is accessible, all right, on port 80. Okay, this is port 80 right here. And if you remember what we did for Jenkins, we said that it's accessible on port 8080. Okay, so, and what we did in the security group of Jenkins, if you look at the security group for the Jenkins server, let's take a look, is that we said here that our load balancer can access Jenkins on port 8080. So if our application, if our web server is allowing, is opened up on port 80, right? That means the load balancer should be able to talk to that web server on the same port, not on port 443, right? So that's where the problem is coming from. So let's go back to security group, and then let's come to instance security group. All right, the inbound should be HTTP, not HTTPS, because the web server itself is accepting connection on port 80. The only difference now is that we are terminating SSL on the side of the load balancer, but the load balancer is still going to communicate with our instance on port 80. Okay, so internally. So let's come to add rule, and then we select HTTP, but still from the load balancer. All right, so let's save that. Now, once we are able to do that, all right, and then let's go back to the target group. Let's take a look at it now. Let's try to refresh. Of course, it might not be immediately, but then let's go back here and let's refresh this page, and let's see if we have our website. Guys, there you go. Our website is up and running. So now we have the correct connection from security group. All right, and the load balancer is actually helping us terminate, all right, SSL for both, all right, target groups. So if you come here to your Jenkins pipeline, if you refresh it, it's still working. All right, there's no error. If you come back to dashboard, everything is working as it should. And interestingly also, all right, if you come here, let's say I go to twoplate.com, for example. It's a popular template website where you can get some free HTML template. Let's say I go to twoplate, for example, and then I decide that I want to use a different template. Let's say I want to update my website, okay? For example, all right, let's try to use this one. All right, so here I'm going to come here, I'm going to say more tools, developer tools, in order to grab something, and then I'll come right here and then I'll download this template. So click on download. We don't need to download it on our system locally, but we just need the download URL for this template. That's all we need actually. So I'm going to close this. Of course, it's going to prompt us to download, but I don't need it. So I'm going to come here to the developer tool page and then filter for the zip. All right. And then I'm going to click on this one. I believe that's the correct guy, or this one, because I need a zip file. Or let's go with this one. So let's go with this one, copy, and then copy the URL. So I'm going to come to my code right here. Right here. All right. And then I'm going to change this. Okay, so let's see. I hope I copied the correct things, the template. All right, so I'm going to change this URL, all right, to basically update the template. And then I'm going to copy this name, all right, and then I'm going to change that with this. All right, so let's change the names so that's correct. All right, so now that we've modified it, we can push again. So git commit. All right, template updated. And then we do git push. So that's going to push the pipeline again, or it's going to trigger the pipeline again. So I can close this. I can come back to my Jenkins, and of course, I can see that my pipeline has been triggered already. So that's going to deploy the new template for us. All right. So, I mean, we don't need to even look at the console output because we know that it's going to work. So let's see. Let's allow this to wrap up. And all I need to do is just to go back to my, all right, is just to go back to my website here and refresh. And while this is working, so let's go back to target group, and voila, the website is now worked. It's now healthy. Okay, because the load balancer can talk to it right now. Okay, so let's go to Jenkins. All right, so the deployment is done in less than 18 seconds. So if I come right here and I refresh this page, I should see my new website up and running. So guys, there you go. All right, so that's your new site. All right, deployed securely from Jenkins. All right, using SSM. So everything that we've done, it's private. All right, nothing really is public. Jenkins server accessible through SSL. You know, GitHub Webhook being triggered also using SSL. I mean, instance accessible through SSM Session Manager and all of that. So everything is pretty secure. All right, nothing is opened, all right, to the outside world. Literally. Okay, so thank you so much, guys. I believe that this 3-part series on the SSM, we've learned a lot of things. We've seen how to do it with Jenkins, we've seen how to use SSL with GitHub Book and all of that, and of course we've been able to learn a great deal, all right, in today's video. So thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.